Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. Open up to some health discussions on this beautiful Tuesday morning. Yes, live right here on S3. Let's talk about this. Sleep, okay?
Why do I suddenly feel so tired?
I mean, that's the thing. You hear the word and you instantly want to dip into that. We all know it is very, very important, and yet, we often don't give it the necessary priority in our busy lives, even though it does play such a vital role in our overall health and in our bodies. I mean, I can't think of anything more important.
It might be actually one of the most important things, and I think as most of us head back to work in 2022, I think a lot of people are already feeling that kind of crash, and we've barely even started the year. I think a lot of people are struggling to find a good night's sleep, that pattern again, dealing with that transition back into healthy sleeping patterns, never mind what COVID has done to us, because that seems to have disturbed a lot of people's sleeping patterns as well.
Yeah, it's kept us up at night, honestly. And this morning we've brought in the specialists to break down the importance of sleep, touch on some common disorders, as well as share insights on how to get the rest that you need at night. Joining us this morning is multimedia health specialist. It's our friend, Dr. Darren Green, and of course, ENT specialist, Dr. Shabir Ibrahim. Gents, doctors, good doctors.
Doctors on our couch. What is going on here?
Good morning. We didn't get the memo to just wear like
just like
him a picture first, and then he got dressed up.
Yeah, they got us.
Yeah, no, you guys look fantastic and energized.
Yes.
Wonderful. So all the best for the new year.
Thank you.
We want nothing but the best for you guys, and thank you for joining our expert panel this morning to talk about something that can be devastating.
And
two of my family members,
Sorry, I've got to say, you can tell that both doctors have had enough sleep, more than enough.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least you're selling it, and that's what we need.
Those makeup people are really good.
I know, they deal with us every morning. Why is this such an important thing? We often overlook it, we take it for granted, but sleep is vital. Why do we need sleep?
R&R. Rest, rejuvenation, and repair. So there are 3 R's there: rest, rejuvenation, and repair. So obviously the day takes its toll on the human body in the different systems. They're products of all the metabolic processes that happen. There are toxins that are formed. There's garbage that needs to be taken out. Yeah. And even the brain needs to move out. Yeah, exactly. And you need to obviously give your body a chance to repair. So a lot of the processes that happen while you sleep show us that you miss it when you haven't had it, and then you start realizing what sleep actually does and means to you. I even know producers that produce albums and do recordings in studio that when they haven't slept, their ears shut down, where they have blocked ears and they can't hear anymore from insomnia. Some people obviously get quite tremulous. That affects your mood. Yeah. So mood can affect sleep, sleep can affect mood, and then obviously with that, obviously all the systems of the body can respond to a lack of sleep.
It's incredible, because the thing is, I have had many experiences of having very little sleep. In fact, Dr. Darren Green and I have had many consultations around this and trying to figure out a way to manage sleep and all of that. We know that there are many health risks associated with it. What are some of those standout ones, Dr. Ibrahim?
Okay, so just to put it into perspective, a quarter of our life is spent sleeping.
Wow.
Okay.
And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing.
And
That's a good thing.
I mean, it sounds like a bad thing, right? You're always just sleeping.
But it affects every organ and every part of our body, starting from the top. As Darren pointed out, it affects your mood, it affects your cognitive abilities. And then we talk about this, but when we mention more serious things, it can affect your cardiovascular system, predispose you to hypertension. It can predispose you, lack of sleep puts you into a pre-diabetic state. You can be predisposed to diabetes. It can affect you in terms of males, your testosterone levels, affect you, cause sexual dysfunction. So every organ is affected by a lack of sleep.
Even your muscle tissue. You can't
Absolutely.
heal if you're not sleeping. I think you are more prone to getting injuries if you're overtired. There's so many things from the physical element that I really do get. I think where it falls down for me is the relativity. For us, if you get 5 hours, it's a good night's sleep, okay? Because we've got to fit a lot into our day and we're up ridiculously early. For some people, they hear 5 hours and they laugh because they need 9 hours. How do you know how much sleep you need? And is there a baseline to say, okay, that's ridiculous? Bearing in mind, I've got 2 small children and I get up at 4 in the morning every day. So, I mean, how much do we need?
Yeah, so according to science, you need between 7 and 9 hours sleep a night.
I'm failing, is what you
Yeah,
said.
yeah, you're failing. And if you go past that, too much sleep can be bad for you too. It can also be bad for your cardiovascular system. So people that are sleeping 10 to 12 hours a night have to be careful as well. But the problem is you need different amounts of sleep in different seasons of your life. Think of the bulletproof student that could go 5 hours a night.
5 days.
5 days in a row. I'm getting tired. You know, so and as you get older, people tend to feel that you need less sleep. That's a bit of a myth because you obviously are less active as you get older for older people, and obviously that takes middagslapies, afternoon naps.
Yeah, and I can just interject there, right? We're talking about the quantity of sleep, and we must also focus on the quality of sleep, which is very important.
Well, let's talk about that, quality of sleep. What is quality
What is good quality
What is
sleep?
good
does that
quality
mean?
Okay, now that's a good question. So a good quality of sleep is like often we got to assess a person. You know, a good history and examination. People would tell me, but doctor, I go to bed at 7 o'clock and I wake up and I'm dog tired and things. And then you go into their history you talk about what they're doing before they sleep, you talk about sleep hygiene, you talk about their health in general, and you talk about their sleep. Even it's very important to bring in your sleep partner, who sometimes gives you invaluable...
Does he snore?
Yes. So very often that's the reason they come in, because their sleep partner forces them to bring it. And the men would often come in and they say, well, what's the problem? Well, she says, you know, she's asked me to come in. And, you know, sleeping in another room from your partner is not very romantic, is
Sounds like you're dying every night. Yeah,
I mean,
no,
I
for
can
sure.
imagine. And this conversation, I mean, we're going to continue with it. There is really so much yet to unpack when it comes to sleep and the quality of sleep that we need to be getting. Right now, I believe that Jamie Lee's on standby with some good stuff out there.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. You're still live with Expresso as we continue our health chat, being a Tuesday morning. Now, to set the premise here, we obviously lead busy lives, don't often prioritize sleep to our detriment, despite the massive impact it has on our complete overall health, mental, physical, and otherwise. So we've covered the importance of sleep in our first chat with our specialist this morning, and we head into part 2 now. We're going to touch on some of those common sleep disorders people often suffer from, and it's a couple that will suffer from these.
Yeah.
So if your partner snores, for instance, we are there to relate to you as well. But we've got our health multimedia specialist, Dr. Darren Green, and ENT specialist, Dr. Shabir Ibrahim, in studio. Thanks for sticking around, guys. Had a power nap.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to come back.
Yes. Those help. Power naps do help.
Do naps actually help?
Good question. Yes, they do, but you must sleep less than 20 minutes.
Oh, no.
Because if I explain to you how sleep cycles work, it takes you 45 minutes to reach the peak of your first cycle.
I've been doing it wrong all my life. I've been
15
napping
minutes, buddy.
4 hours.
Can you back them? Can you go 20 minutes, wake up for 5 minutes, 20 minutes, wake up for 5 minutes?
Caffeine naps are the latest thing, where you take a shot of espresso and then obviously dose for about 15 minutes and then come
So
back.
basically my life, basically.
Well, from naps to, some of those common disorders, snoring is a big one. I mean, it can be a touchy subject. I know that there probably have been divorces that have emerged
I'd
from...
definitely be a
Why are you
tipping-
looking at Graham? Did you
It'd be a tipping point, man. Yeah.
I'm not saying that Graham snores, but he does have the look of someone who potentially
Who could
is a
make a
snorer sometimes. What causes snoring, and what are the treatment options there?
Sure, I think you mentioned the word disorders first. So quickly, sleep disorders are primary and secondary. Primary is where there's a fundamental problem in the wiring and the circuitry of communication of the brain with the neurotransmitters and the hormones. Whereas secondary sleep disorders that you have disrupting your sleep are related to another condition, either medication you're taking or medical condition or previous surgeries, for example. But snoring, I'm glad we've got an ENT on the couch today, because snoring has many factors, and we all speak about apnea. The word apnea, and you've heard the word obstructive sleep apnea, but so too you get central sleep apnea. But apnea is when you arrest breathing. In other words, you know those people that snore when they're having a bit of a...
And then it sounds
And then
like
they
just
pause,
stop.
yeah.
So they often
you
say
think they're
that-
gone, right?
They describe, doctor, he snores, and I'm used to it, but at times he cuts off.
Yeah.
That's very often they say he cuts off. And what's happening is you are stopping breathing, and then your oxygen saturation levels drops, and then your brain tells you, "But it's time to breathe," and then you
and that's like a
you
fight or
you
flight
arouse.
kind of,
For a brief second or so, you arouse. So during the night, you're having multiple arousals, and we could actually document this with a sleep study.
Yeah.
So you could be classified as having mild, moderate, or severe obstructive apnea, which has significant health implications.
Oh, you can imagine. I've actually been treated. It was the position of my jaw that led to the difficulties in breathing, and obviously grinding my teeth being a part of that. But I would be that guy that would wake up on a plane and the whole plane's looking at me like, "Oh, he's alive. Oh, he's okay. He's alive."
Because it can be scary.
I get that. Is there a cure for snoring? Surely we've been grappling with this demon for long enough now. In the people who cross your path, how do you approach it?
Absolutely. So it's very important to get assessed because there's multiple reasons why a person snores. And even a normal person can snore at times. You either basically you're very tired, or you go somewhere, you have a lot of alcohol that
Red wine.
relaxes your muscles, or you take some medication. And then you could have physical things wrong. You could have, as you said, you had jaw problems, you could have a problem with your nose, a deviation, you can have a bulky oropharynx, and you can have other medical things that Darren touched on that could predispose you to snoring and obstructive apnea.
Are men bigger snorers than women?
It's a great
I mean, because
question.
we've
It's a
been
good
led to
question,
believe
yeah.
that in the movies.
Tread
come
lightly,
on.
guys.
No,
Gotta say,
answer is no.
lightly.
So I often say that basically, yes, men do snore more, but as a woman gets older, the snoring increases more or less the levels of men. So, yeah, she'll get there.
See how quietly he said that.
If you think about the soft tissue of the neck, which is one of the biggest causes in our country of people being overweight and having moderate to severe obesity, the soft tissue in the neck, when you lay flat on your back, what happens is that soft tissue actually rests onto your airway and presses down and actually can occlude the airway to a large degree when you've got a very thick neck with lots of soft tissue in the neck.
Wow.
So those people are more predisposed, obviously, to developing obstructive sleep apnea as well.
We're going to continue this discussion in just a moment. We are talking about sleeping disorders. Insomnia, something that can have, as we have identified, a massive impact, not only on your physical health, but your mental well-being as well. Stick around.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Yes, it is your feel-good breakfast show, Expresso, live here on S3 Tuesday morning, and we're talking health. We're talking all things sleep. And this was once said about sleep by Thomas Dekker. He said, sleep is like the golden chain that binds our health and body together. So we couldn't agree more. We've established that, which is why we brought in those specialists in the house to talk about healthy sleeping habits and disorders, and multimedia health specialist Dr. Darren Green and ENT specialist, that's ear, nose and throat specialist Dr. Shabir Ibrahim. They join us to chat more about sleep and the lack thereof.
Yeah, because it's all connected. It really is all connected. So we've touched on sleep apnea and the kind of the degree, the scale that it can build. But where does it actually come from? Surely we're not born with this kind of sleep defect, or maybe you've highlighted the two
primaries, yeah.
the primary concept. But for those of us where it develops, how does it gradually develop, and how do we nip it in the bud?
Absolutely. So we've mentioned two big types of sleep apnea, which we'll touch on. We just have to remember that there are sleeping disorders that make you sleep too much. We're focusing on insomnia all the time here. But have you heard of
Are they contagious, and
narcolepsy?
where can I catch it?
You've heard of narcolepsy, for example, as one of them, where you can fall asleep within a very short period of time and actually go into deep sleep within seconds of sitting on a chair.
Are they lucky or are they
No, if you imagine that happens while you're driving on
or
the
operating
train or
heavy machinery.
is he doing an operation on a
man.
patient, doctor?
Yeah.
But anyway, so those are important. But coming back to apnea, you get obstructive sleep apnea and central sleep apnea, where the cause of the apnea is different. The cause of the regulation from the brain and the central nervous system differs from an obstructive cause, which could be related anatomically, where my colleague would find, obviously, different reasons and medical causes to treat. I think you mentioned the deviated septums, the jaw, etc.
I just like to mention one thing on apnea. You know, we're concentrating on adults, but you do get apnea in kids. And very often, you know, a parent would come in and say, oh, you know, he snores a bit like his dad, and it's a bit of like a joke. But it's not a joke, because apnea in children is always abnormal. It affects basically the development of the face, the jaw, the dentition. So it can actually affect the way you look. It can change the way you look.
Phase, yeah.
And in its worst state, it puts pressure on the heart, and it can affect the heart as well. So the one point I'd like to make, snoring in kids is always abnormal. Check it out.
Always, always.
Get to a specialist.
Tonsils, adenoids, you know, all those things.
And in adults, basically, obstructive apnea is a big problem with serious health implications. Seek advice, get it assessed, and there is treatment out there.
What is the treatment? How do you go about it?
Okay, so we spoke a bit about a sleep study. Firstly, see a doctor, get it assessed, see where's the level of your obstruction. Is it at the nose? Is it at the oropharynx? Is it associated with your weight? Because very often we see weight and we look at a person's abdomen, but you don't realize you're putting in fat into your organs, into your neck, decreasing the diameter of your airway. So get it assessed, and then he'd probably ask you to have a sleep study. And very often I tell people this is like the ECG of sleep. So it tells you how many times you're stopping breathing, what's your oxygen saturation, what position you snore.
Who do you go to do a sleep study?
Labs.
You're looking at him, labs. So there's a society, the South African Society for Sleep and Health, and now they have accredited people who actually do sleep studies. So you can check.
Growing space.
So sleep medicine falls under the gambit of neurologists, ENTs, physicians,
Dentists,
maxillofacials, and you get technologists as well. It's best to see who's accredited and go for assessment and take it from there.
I wasn't going to let you, gentlemen, leave without asking this question around sleepwalking and talking. I mean, that is a serious disorder, and often we can make fun of it sometimes growing up, but I imagine it's quite serious, and it can be very dangerous as well.
Yeah, and I know.
It can be quite debilitating. So, I mean, sleepwalking, or it's called somnambulism, the proper word. It's associated with two major pathological mechanisms. The first one involves dysregulation of hormones that keep you awake and wake you up versus the neurotransmitters that are trying to inhibit and keep you asleep. So there's that imbalance. But it happens in the non-REM phase of sleep. In other words, the non-dreaming part of sleep, when you are actually in your deepest stages of sleep. Which is quite interesting. But there's a lot of science, obviously, that one has to go into in describing and explaining how that dysregulation occurs. But certainly a condition that children normally grow out of as they become older, but certainly we have seen it in adults as well.
Yeah, and it's quite freaky. Like, some kids can do it, and obviously they don't realize what's going on, and it's very difficult to know how to relate or what to do, and what should you do if you...
So there are ways of actually waking someone up while they are sleepwalking, slowly, in a non-aggressive or confrontational way, etc. And, you know, obviously that's what you need to learn. But getting into the sleep architecture with the basic analysis, once again, of a sleep study, looking at the architecture of sleep, often it involves not being able to connect the sleep cycles, where you go from a deep sleep into arousal state without going through the REM or the dreaming part of sleep.
And very often this sleepwalking, sleep talking is associated with other sleep disorders. Or it may be, as he said, you know, we talked about hormonal dopamine levels, etc. But it's also shown associations with things like iron deficiency, certain metabolic problems, etc.
You've got to test. You've got to test. I'm loving the fact that there is such a focus in this area and that we're starting to see the bigger picture and how to connect those dots. Gentlemen, amazing. Thank you for looking so good this morning. But you've given us some absolute gems. We've picked up a huge amount. So thank you to both of you. Go and have a good night's sleep tonight. You've earned it. I'm certainly going to try and sleep a little bit better tonight. Yeah. I think the most important take home for me here is don't let it go on for too long because it can damage your health, and especially if it's happening within your little ones. Go and see a specialist. We need our sleep, man.